she reluctantly come to the understanding that you can't really trust a lot of scientific published research because
Behind the practice.
Welcome back to Behind the Practice. I'm Katie Brinkley, and today we're sitting down with Razi Berry. Razi, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be with you.
You know, we've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of different practitioners and clinicians, and today's episode is going to be a little bit of a different conversation because NDNR is known as the go-to resource for clinicians. How did that idea start?
Thank you so much for asking, Katie. And this is our 21st year of publication. It's NDNR, Journal of Applied Natural Medicine. And in 2005, my co-founder, Dr. David Tallman, he had dual degrees, a doctor of chiropractic and a naturopathic medical doctorate. And he noticed that within the field of chiropractic, they had a trade publication where the physicians shared clinical information, and there was nothing like that about naturopathic medicine. So it started out just as a way for naturopathic physicians to share clinical pearls, clinical anecdotes, what they were seeing in the clinic. But over the last 2 decades now, it's really expanded to doctors of all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of practitioners, using it as a resource to see, what's happening in patient care. So we really serve the practitioner who's maybe not so much on the speaking tours or out there teaching, but they're in the field of patient care every day. And anecdotal medicine is so important, and it sometimes gets overlooked in the mainstream for research instead. Research is kind of higher on the hierarchy, but what happens, and hopefully we can go into the history of that in a moment, but it's a really important part of medicine.
Well, let's go into the history right now. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, well, medicine as we know it today was really founded by physician observations. Before there were medical books and medical schools, doctors and surgeons, and at first it was just one, you were a doctor and a surgeon, they would put their hands on a patient, and the oldest papyrus is 3,600 years old, and they would basically say, like, this is a patient that I can try to treat, or this is a patient that I don't think I can help. And those were written down to share with other clinicians. Then Galen did that a little bit further about 1,000 years later, and that really shaped what modern medicine is today. At that time, doctors and surgeons kind of split, and doctors started to learn more by reading, and surgeons were the ones that were more hands-on. That was a long time ago. But as medicine has progressed, and then the Flexner report, long after, we really started focusing on the science, or what is called the science. And that is very important. But the anecdote is really where we find a lot of the trends in medicine start early. So I'll give you an example, like the microbiome. Everyone's talking about the importance of the microbiome and the seat of the immune system in your digestive tract, but natural medicine and integrative medicine, we're talking about that a couple of decades ago. And you look at things like peptides, stem cell therapy, some of these were considered sort of woo-woo, even adaptogens, 12, 15, 20 years ago. But if you follow case reports, you can really see what doctors are noticing is working with their patients. And that is where things start to catch fire. Because it all starts with what is the patient outcome, which, again, I'm not saying that the scientific studies aren't important. They're very important, but so are the anecdotes.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in this? And you said publication's been going for 21 years now. How did you get started?
Well, so I have kind of struggled with chronic illness for most of my life. And again, I noticed that this was the one field of medicine that didn't really have those clinical anecdotes published anywhere in a regular form. So I started seeking that out. I wanted to find a way to tell more patients about it. And in 2005, there was not a lot of internet. Doctors back then were still using fax machines to share clinical like test results and things like that, and to share files with others. So I just decided that if somebody isn't going to do it, we're going to do it. So we just started by inviting doctors to submit cases from all around North America, doctors that practice natural medicine. And in the early days, it was mostly naturopathic physicians. And it just started off as like a project, really. And now, yes, we have the largest archive of natural medicine case reports. We publish 12 issues digitally now a year, and then 4 special print issues.
Wow. So let's talk about those case studies, because they're real case studies, not just studies. They happen with real people that can get submitted. So why is that so important in modern practice?
Yes. So it's, a case report, for those listening that might not know, it's when a doctor basically catalogs what a patient experiences. So they talk about, what the presentation is. So let's say it's maybe a 52-year-old woman with migraines that are debilitating. So they first annotate what the presentation is, and then they catalog what they did to test, like what diagnostics were used, what the findings of those were, and then what the treatment plan was, and then the outcome. And so what's really important about case reports are you might have, 20 different women with the same sequelae of symptoms, but the root cause might be a little different for each one. And so the treatment approach might be different for each one. And that's where individualized medicine is shown to be so powerful.
Yeah. So what makes NDNR so... What's a differentiator between other reports that are out there or other studies that are out there that people could be looking at?
Well, studies are done in a controlled environment, and the way it can be reproduced is tested. But of course, we all know that there are flaws with that. I mean, Marcia Angell, who was the medical editor for the New England Journal of Medicine for 20 years, has a famous quote. I don't have it verbatim, but if you're listening, you can look it up. That said that she reluctantly come to the understanding that you can't really trust a lot of scientific published research because, of various reasons we don't have to go into today. So the case report is just valuable because it is a doctor sharing what happened with a patient, and there's not anything else behind it. It's not, being funded. It's just the observation. Now, because of that, we're different than some publications that are, everything they publish is just a company submitting something. We have opportunities for that because doctors need to know what is proprietary or exciting or new and innovative. But doctors return again and again because they're always looking to see what their colleagues are seeing, what their colleagues are experiencing. And maybe it can help them with a difficult case. And then they can also search the 21 years of archives to see if there's something in there that might give them a clinical pearl.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't even, that option didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
And it's giving them that availability to
Yes.
treat somebody that maybe they didn't even think about that as being a way to treat them.
Right. Because they're just, the human body is so dynamic. Things are so interconnected, and everyone's experiences and, where their history, their health history, maybe they were breastfed, maybe they weren't, maybe they had prior surgeries, maybe they've got a dental problem that nobody thought of before that's affecting it. I mean, it's just innumerable, the variables with human health and disease. And so, it's very helpful. And because of that, we just have sort of quietly grown very quickly. Post-pandemic was when we started, we always had the naturopathic and integrative practitioners, coming to us. But after the pandemic is when I noticed, wow, that the amount of people, just everyday people coming to the site because they are curious, or maybe a doctor doesn't practice integrative medicine, but their patient is asking questions and demanding. We hear from those doctors too that they find our resource helpful.
So that actually leads me perfectly to the next question. How do you balance what natural medicine wisdom you're receiving with emerging medical and science trends that are coming out?
Yes. Yeah. So we often hear the trends in the cases first because the doctors are always looking for innovation, right? They're always looking for ways to improve patient care. There's always new innovations. And so the doctors aren't only talking about, like the cases don't only talk about herbs, for instance. It's everything the patient goes, whether it's some, functional medicine testing or it's some also traditional diagnostic testing. There's a therapeutic order in naturopathic medicine that a lot of our readers, even who aren't naturopathic doctors, really learn from, because there is an order that you do the least invasive thing first and kind of help support the body's systems. But there are times, of course, that you need pharmaceutical or something more chemical in nature or even synthetic. But you want to make sure that the body's detox pathways and that their nutrition and their sleep, those are important parts of it too. So it really is a blend. So in the cases, you'll see a spectrum from people who maybe are just taking a certain herbal protocol all the way to someone who's maybe doing some pharmaceuticals plus peptides plus stem cells. It's really a whole spectrum.
Yeah. How do you help clinicians evaluate when there's not a large clinical trial?
Right. Well, that's a really good question, and it's just sitting at another juncture of medicine. So the doctors are always taking into consideration what clinical trials say, but often what we find clinical trials are often about something that has been used historically. You look at probiotics, for instance. There's a lot of amazing research studies about probiotics, but there has been a long history of fermented foods and like yogurts and things like that as part of human health. Herbs have often been used from antiquity, and but the studies support what we already knew. So the studies help lend credibility to the treatment plans, but they don't really tell the doctor how to implement those.
Yeah.
And so you're just seeing how different doctors implement these protocols, and that's where a lot of the value is.
Well, and one of the things that you emphasize is the individualized care over the one-size-fits-all mentality. What gets lost when clinicians rely too much on only guidelines and algorithms?
Yes. I don't want to, standardization has its place for sure, but I think you just talk to the average person who goes to a hospital and you can understand where some of the problems. Standardization is more economically, it's cheaper, right? Standardization is cheaper. There's some safety within standardization too, just depending. There's so many variables. And so we're not against clinical trials, and people do publish their clinical trials also in the Journal of Applied Natural Medicine. But the main, and the reason why those are can get seen so visibly is because the doctors are coming for a tool that they rely on. They're coming for an archive they rely on. So I'm not against that. We're just something else. We say, hey, this is important too. It was recognized from the beginning of time, and it's just sort of fallen. Just in the scientific world, it's just not considered as robust, and it doesn't need to exist on its own. We're just offering the other side. What's the tangible way that the clinicians are using this, and what are the outcomes they're seeing with the patients?
So how do you ensure that the archive stays relevant and up to date?
So we have a wonderful editorial team, And they are like our medical director, Dr. Kareem Kandil. He's an MD, ND, so he's got both degrees. Our co-founder, Dr. David Tallman, is a chiropractic physician and a naturopathic physician. And we have a team of medical reviewers. Even though we don't call ourselves a peer-reviewed journal, all the articles are reviewed. And we just have deep connections within the communities that we just talk to people we know, and they just send, at this point, they just send cases in without really needing to ask for them. And so because of that, we're just surprised and delighted with the types of innovation that clinicians are doing in their clinics. And again, sometimes these are just busy doctors who they're not on TikTok and they're not on Instagram, and they're just busy every day seeing patients.
Yeah.
And so it's a way for them to share their knowledge and help preserve this really important type of medicine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as we wrap up today's conversation, what is one misconception that many clinicians might have about natural medicine?
Excuse me.
Well, I think most clinicians, if you really talk to them privately, they'll talk about their like grandmother's, hot toddies they gave them or something like that. So I think everyone kind of knows that there is a place for natural medicine. Sometimes they say it's akin to like, if you have a diesel engine, you can't put regular gas in it. It's not going to do very well. So I think we kind of know the importance of nature and nutrition and things like that. But I think where the problem is when they fear that there's like money behind it. There's like doctors are just trying to sell supplements, and that's just not the case. Doctors don't come into this field of natural or integrative or functional medicine to sell supplements. Like people are often coming to them because it's a last resort. They've tried other things, and they're just looking for someone who can spend more time and listen. The other side of medicine, truly conventional medicine, they don't have a lot of time per patient, right? A general practitioner doesn't have a lot of time, and so they can't always go into a deep, deep history. So I think maybe a misconception is also that they aren't fully trained, and that is also not true. They have all of the same sciences, differential diagnoses, pharmacology, more nutrition. And so I think, though, that those misconceptions are sort of waning. And that was one of the things I noticed the most after the pandemic, really.
Yeah. Looking ahead to the future, and I agree with you. I think that the pandemic shifted a lot of people's viewpoints on how they're looking at medicine. So let's go ahead. That was only 5 years ago. Well,
Yeah.
six-ish now. But let's go into the future another 5 to 10 years. How do you see natural medicine, natural research-based medicine evolving?
Well, I think that we're watching it happen now. They're looking more at the interconnection of the systems, like the lymphatic system, like fascia, like understanding that the body has this piezoelectric nature, that even our bones, when we're walking, produce a type of energy, the same kind of energy that like our heart runs on, right? And so I think that there's going to be more innovation behind understanding these interconnected systems and what signals the health of those systems. And I think that's where research is going. And you see that with things like peptides, exosomes, and also understanding what are the constituents in traditional herbals that our grandmothers saw working, but we didn't exactly know why.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, Razi, if people are listening and they're saying, man, I need to check out this index, I want to sign up, where should they check out you? Sign up for the index?
Thank
Tell
you
us
so
all the
much.
details.
So it is an open access journal, so you can go to NDNR, that stands for Naturopathic Doctor News Review, and that is where we publish the Journal of Applied Natural Medicine. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook as well. So ndnr.com.
Amazing. Well, Razi, this has been such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much.
Behind the Practice is produced by Next Step Social and Podcasting and hosted by Katie Brinkley and Sean Quintero. A special thank you to our guests today. This episode was recorded live at the Boston BioLife Functional Longevity Summit. A special thank you to the team that helped make this podcast happen.